Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
I guess the first question I have is, how successful would you have been playing this completely straight? Your career as a lobbyist. I mean, you played within the rules. How successful would you have been?
Well, I think playing within the rules, pretty much 99% of what I did was within the rules. The problem's the rules.
Right.
Playing within a moral framework, maybe, versus the legal framework in Washington. In other words, if I were not using money to bribe people and not using tickets to games like lobbyists do, it would be very hard to be successful, unfortunately, in Washington if I'm up against lobbyists who are doing that. And in the major lobbying efforts, they're doing that. And they're holding fundraisers, they're bringing in big money, they're using their boxes at the sporting arenas to hold fundraisers, which gives them the permission around the gift ban.
Right.
And it's very tough. Most lobbyists don't avail themselves of these kind of financial gratuities and things like that, but they're not competing in the big dollar lobbying stakes.
Right.
They're working on smaller marginal issues, sometimes against each other, and they're able to carve out a little existence there. But at the upper echelon of the business, without using money right now, it's hard to compete, and that's the problem.
I guess one of the questions I have here is, before we get to the reforms you're talking about, is what should we infer about the lobbying business from the Jack Abramoff example?
Well, I guess my example exposed what was going on more than perhaps any previous example, because they got all of my emails. I sent 850,000 emails during the time I was a lobbyist, and there was a roadmap finally for the reform community and for prosecutors and for others who were interested in this to see actually what happens. I try to do more of that in my book to kind of explain, because the emails would go over the course of years, and I would try to truncate it and explain it in the book. But for the first time, they got to look inside as to what's going on. And I think the inference is that there is a segment of Washington that plays like this. I didn't innovate anything. I didn't create anything. I may have done more of it, and I may have gone over certain lines in the sand that really you don't need to go over, but for whatever reason I did go over them. But the problem isn't the people who are breaking the law. There aren't a lot of them. I'm not among a class of hundreds of people doing that. There are very few. The problem is the people who are keeping the law. The problem is the law. And that's what needs to be changed.
So you have 3 or 4 reforms that, if you could just kind of briefly run through those.
Sure. And I'm working right now. I work with a group called United Republic, and we've put together progressive and conservative folks who agree on these basic things. And it's, number one, to eliminate or severely reduce the amount of money that the special interests have in politics by creating a credit which would help fund elections. Citizens could use a voucher to make political contributions, and candidates who take them would thereby pledge that they won't accept the big PAC money and all the rest of it. Number two, to prohibit lobbyists and special interests, their clients basically, from using financing to raise money and to ensure the gratuities continue to flow. None of that. That's got to get cut off. Number two, to close as best as we can the revolving door between public service and cashing in. And in doing so, by the way, both of these, to redefine what it is to be a lobbyist. When someone can run for president who's clearly lobbying and claim that he was a strategic advisor or a history professor or something like that, it really points up the problem. And so tighten up severely the definition of what a lobbyist is. So the people who are actually lobbying have to register and reveal the fact that they are lobbying and thereby fall under these restrictions. Next, we're looking at term limits. To try to limit the amount of terms that members can stay there. Over time, we find that virtually everybody in some way starts to engage in the corruption.
Right.
They're dissembling in the sense that they don't call it corruption, and they claim and they would cry that no one's going to buy my vote for $2,000 or a ticket to the Redskins game or something like that. But the truth is they're recipients of what are in essence bribes. And over time they break down. Even those that are good at the beginning break down.
Well, the implication in all of this is that, on some level, the system's for sale.
Yes, the system is absolutely for sale.
So is the moral problem or the ethical problem on the lobbying side?
It's on to start with. It's on the congressional side. These are the people who make the rules.
Right.
The lobbyists are taking advantage of what are basically a bunch of rules that are created for people to take advantage. Don't forget, most of the lobbyists come from Capitol Hill. People on Capitol Hill, when I was lobbying, 90% of the people I encountered wanted to work for me because they want to make more money and they want to basically transition to the, quote, easy life.
Right.
So it's a big problem. These are the people who have to make the rules. And so naturally, it seems, they're going to be making rules that benefit them financially while they're there and when they leave. So these are the kind of rules that have to be changed.
Mm-hmm. Would you limit terms of just members, or would you limit terms of, I mean, you know, one of the standard constructs here is that if you limit the terms of members, what you do is empower the lobby and the staff.
Right. Actually, I would prefer, I don't know, we're in discussion about it, but my preference is to limit the upper staff's term also. A secretary, I don't think it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody who's a chief of staff, I think should also have a term limit. A legislative director, somebody who has real power within an office.
Right.
Because in many cases, the staff actually have equal power to the congressman within their offices. In terms of limiting the lobbyists' capacity, if we cut off the revolving door and we eliminate their ability to use money to tilt the playing field, at that point I'm not certain we need to limit their longevity there because they can't play in an untoward way. And at that point, if the playing field is leveled, all the rest of those lobbyists who are not people using money become equally important. And then knowledge becomes important. Your capacity to explain an issue and to present its merits become important. And that's what we need to get to.
Right. So if I've worked hard all my life and I've made a bazillion simoleons and I want to start playing in public life and I want to spend my bazillion simoleons getting so-and-so elected or so-and-so elected or so-and-so elected, why should I be limited?
Well, now I differ a little bit from the rest of the reform movement. I feel that you shouldn't be limited unless you want something back. All right, that you should be able to spend your money and your resources to express your beliefs and speech, and that's fine. The minute you want something back, though, the minute you say, oh, listen, Congressman, by the way, I know I raised $100,000 for you. My company's having a real problem with the government. At that moment, you should be disqualified from participating in the system other than in a de minimis amount. I wanted it to be limited 100%, but it seems the constitutional scholars working with us say that you can't eliminate it entirely, so we're talking about reducing it to $100.
Right.
But the moment and by the way, most of the wealthy people playing in the system are involved in getting things from the government. Are involved. There are some, of course, on both sides of the aisle, by the way, who just want to see a better country, whatever their version of a better country is. And to me, those people shouldn't be limited. And I, by the way, don't think it would survive the court trying to limit them. However, those who want something back are making a choice. Nobody forces you to lobby the government. Nobody forces you to go get a tax break or to go get a grant or go get a contract. If you choose to do that, you've put yourself into a different category. And we have in our tradition many precedents for people willingly giving up rights that they have in the Constitution. For example, if you get security clearance within the government, you give up your free speech rights to get that clearance. So there are precedents for it, and that's one of the reasons we'd like to see it happen with the special interests.
Walk me through something. So let's say I'm the rich guy, I've got my bazillion simoleons, and what I really want to do is help Jack Abramoff get this term limits thing. So I want to go to members of Congress and say, you need to pass this term limits law, and I'm going to use any and all of my resources to help get that passed, because I think that's an important thing. I'm basically expressing my beliefs in that way. Should there be any limits on me? I mean, it's sort of like, it sort of sets up as a thing where you can't play if you've decided to play. Does that make sense?
Well,
so just walk me through it.
again, things like term limits, abortion, gun control, foreign policy, where you're not involved in the foreign policy, any general issue, in terms of, again, from my approach, and I think some of the conservatives involved, should buy you an ability to do whatever you want, to speak freely. It's just that moment where you're trying to use, as most of them do, that money and that leverage to personally or corporately or with your labor union make an advantage financially in some way, or to get something special that the rest of us don't get. When you become special interest versus a general interest, that's the moment where, from my point of view, you should be eliminated in the system. Again, virtually all, not all, but virtually all the big money playing in the system is playing so that they can control how the government deals with their industry or deals with their company or provides them some gratuity or benefit. And so we believe that eliminating this money will greatly reduce the costs, first of all, available, the amount of money available politically,
Right.
and we're trying to democratize it through a voucher system so that every citizen can apply their voucher to giving money. And we feel that more people will do it. Right now, too few people participate in the system.
What stopped you?
What stopped me?
What stopped you doing this? I mean, would you still be doing what you've been doing?
Unfortunately, I would be. I didn't recognize I was doing something wrong.
You didn't go through a warning barrier or something where you kind of went, hey, was that?
No, I mean, I wish I could say I did,
Uh-huh.
obviously, and I wish I had stopped, because maybe my life would not have been as hellacious as it became. But on the other hand, I wouldn't have stopped. I would still be there today.
So this was a continuum. This wasn't a thing where you sort of got to a certain point and you said, beyond this point, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. I mean, it was just a continuum. This followed this, followed this, followed this, followed this, and all of a sudden you were too far.
Yeah, I think I was blithely, persisting in what I thought was the way the game is played and doing things. I guess my problem was that the ends justified my means. I wasn't as bothered by the system because I felt I was doing good things in the system. I was working for clients whose causes I supported and getting them victories over big bad enemies that in the establishment and that kind of thing, and making a lot of money for them, making less money but significant money for me, giving that money away to charity. So I sort of did all of the things to help reinforce in my mind that I'm the good guy. And so it wasn't until, and it wasn't immediately, by the way, when my career ended. At first I went through the normal simulation of, gee, why are they picking on me, and this is ridiculous, until I started to honestly look at those 850,000 emails and see in them the truth, because they were in black and white, written at the time. And fortunately, I was honest enough with myself to come to the conclusion that I didn't like what I saw. And that's when I started to have a mindset change.
Right. So, I guess the simplest way to ask this is just the direct one. Why should we listen to you? You're kind of the smoker telling us how to watch our health, right?
Well,
the former smoker.
Yeah,
Right?
actually, one should listen to a former smoker who coughed and maybe had his lung removed and has a hole in his throat. Yeah, definitely listen to him. But also mainly, I've been inside rooms and behind doors that most Americans haven't. I've been in this. I did this. I was at the tip of the spear of this. I know what they're capable of. I know what they're doing. And I know how it does indeed pervert our democracy. In terms of people ask me, well, how do we know you're sincere? I mean, there's really no way to look inside my heart. Of course I'm sincere. Frankly, I don't get a lot of benefit from this other than, marginal good feeling that I'm maybe doing the right thing and making some recompense. I owe a lot of money in restitution. This is, the reform business is not a big money business, and I have to support a family of 5, but this is important to me to try to undo some of what I did. I know I'm never going to be able to fully make recompense for being in that system for so many years, but if I can help be the force that changes it and fixes the problem, then at least I'll feel satisfied that I was able to do something.
Tell me a little bit about, basically how you're making your living now. Are you making giant speaking fees, or how does? Tell me how this works.
I mean, I don't make giant speaking fees. I make basically what I can make, and they're not huge. And I do owe $44 million in restitution, and I am on probation. So everything I spend, I'm allowed to basically spend money to live. Not only no extravagances, no extraneous expenses. Everything I spend is monitored. Everything I make is monitored,
Right.
And it goes to restitution. I have a $44 million restitution order, and I don't know if I'll ever be successful enough to pay it off. It won't be by doing this. This is mainly to get the word out and to educate people. United Republic and I are hoping to launch this summer. We're drafting now a legislation
Right.
that actually deals with these issues, and we're hoping to launch a political campaign to bring it to the fore for the election coming up. to challenge members to pledge to support this, and if they don't, to go after a few of them. Not me personally, obviously, I can't be involved in the political system like that. But
I was going to ask, we're going to see Jack Abramoff in the halls of Congress lobbying for these reforms?
No, I don't think my presence in Congress is desired by anyone, including me. No, I mean, there are lots of, one of the points I make about what a lobbyist is, there are lots of roles in lobbying besides going to meet with the congressman. What I've done, I think what my function has been here, is to maybe give some stiff spine to the reform movement, to encourage them to think like lobbyists and stop thinking like public advocates. Because the reason, when I was a lobbyist, we never even, they weren't even the butt of a joke with us. We never paid attention to them. And the reason they weren't paid attention to is that they didn't know how to play the system, not with the money, but even playing hard politically with the system in the way that we did. So what I'm doing is applying those skills that I have from the past and those things that are legal from the past to try to empower this effort to get to success. And as well, I'm speaking and I'm on TV and doing as much as I can to push the effort and to make people aware of this. That's the reason primarily that I go out to speak, that I'm on the radio and things like that. I want people to know what's going on. And that's why I wrote my book, primarily to show them it's much worse than you think. People disdain the government. They certainly hate the Congress. The ratings of the Congress, approval ratings, are lower than, I say that are lower than Saddam Hussein's were among the people who killed him. But that's fine, but you need to know exactly what the problem is, and we need to have solutions to the problem, and I think we're coming up with solutions that actually might change things. So we'll see.
Okay, a couple more and I'll let you out.
Sure.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years? How does this track out?
It's hard for me to think 10 years ahead. To be honest with you, it's hard for me to think a year ahead. Once this happened to me, I kind of take each day as it comes. This is what I'm doing now. I'm doing other things to try to make money. I mean, I'm going back into the motion picture business, trying to launch some projects there and working assiduously and creating certain non-political entertainment things and some other ideas as well. So I'm trying to take each day as it comes. My life has taken some rather unexpected turns. I have a family, 5 children, a lovely wife, a father, brother and sister, and I try to spend as much time with them as I can, especially having been taken away from them for so long. And to help, at least among the kids, continue to heal them, getting through what has been a horrific process for them.
Right. And I guess one thing I'm curious about, do you see yourself in any kind of a watchdog role? I mean, you're uniquely situated to go over there, over there, over there, over there, and point to things that are going wrong.
Well, I have been pointing to kind of a 30,000-foot view of what goes wrong, where to look. But I don't see myself in the role of somebody who wants to call out individuals who are doing wrong. What I went through, I have to be honest with you, even my worst enemy, I wouldn't want to see them go through it. Not just the prison part of it, which was horrific, but also the media part. And so it's very difficult for me to, even though I participated, by the way, in 2,000 investigations at the Department of Justice, and openly and honestly and cooperatively, it pains me to see individuals go through this kind of suffering. And so I'd rather systemically address it. Let's create a system where there aren't Jack Abramoffs in 5 years and in 10 years, and there aren't Duke Cunninghams, there aren't people like that. Let's create a system where, I shouldn't say there aren't. There are always going to be people who break the law. But let's move the line in a way that 99% of the people don't want to break the law. Let's make sure they're not doing things that are improper and corrupt and contemptuous legally. Let's make sure they stop.
Okay. And last question, what should the consequences be for the people who corrupt the system, whether they're on the receiving side or the giving side?
Well, I mean, obviously they need to be removed from the system for openers. The notion that some of them continue to want to jump back in is kind of bizarre, but it's hard for me to say that they need long jail terms, because I think people who say that generally haven't been to prison. It's just very hard to want any other human being to have that. Somebody who's violent is, to me, a different deal. When this started, I offered to go teach school in the inner cities and be incarcerated as it were, living at the school and clean the school and things like that, just to do something productive. One of the things about prison in America is that it's just storage. It's very unproductive, not only for people who have some capacities to help, but for inmates who need rehabilitation. They need skills other than criminal skills. They just don't get them. And so that's another cause that's important to me. It's something I'm trying to help to some degree. I'm trying to stay focused on succeeding in one cause, but it's something I'm certainly going to come back to and work on, because it's a tremendous disgrace what's going on here. We have millions of people who are affected by this, either directly or indirectly, and we need to address it. So, but in terms of what should happen to them, once the rules are in place, they are going to have to suffer the consequences like I did if they violate them.
Okay, great. Leaving anything out? Anything
I don't
obvious?
think so. Yeah,
okay.
no.
I really appreciate the time.
Thanks.
Thanks
so
for
much
coming
for
in.
having me. Appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.